So again, good morning to all of you. We'll be very quick before I hand over to Christian, who will actually moderate this session. Just to say that for us, system change is very important for innovation because transformative and disruptive change that we would like to see happening cannot happen without system thinking. We need to move away from a linear way of innovation to something that is more interactive. We need to move away from product innovation where you develop a product and then you look for use cases. And we need to move away from closed innovation that cannot address the challenge of climate and sustainability to more open innovation, radical collaboration, co-creation, and co-evolution. So it means that if focusing on human is the right thing to do, doing it rightly is all about leveraging system innovation. So with that, I will hand over to Kirsten, who kindly accepted to moderate this session.
Thank you very much, Masamba. Good morning, everybody. So I am going to invite up onto stage our 4 panelists, hoping that we have everybody here. I know Andrew is here, so Andrew Steer. If we have also Renuka and Dr. Arshi and Jim, then please, maybe let's keep it close. So these 4 on either side, and we'll leave this beside. Please. Jim? We've never met, so I'm introducing myself for a start. Lovely. Welcome. Lovely to meet you. We saw you in the line this morning. Yeah. And we are waiting for Dr. Arshi Ayub Mohammed Zaveri. We're not sure? Okay. All right. So for the minute, it's the 3 of us. Let's get the microphone set up. Press anything? All set. Okay, everyone comfortable? Andrew, you feeling all right there? I know you're a little bit, we're in a very far away space. This is okay?
I'm doing great. Thank you, and it's nice to be here.
All right, so this is the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub. It's the second session for the first day of Conference of the Parties, number 28 in Dubai. 28, it's been a long journey and we are still not there. So this session is very much focused on intersections, intersectionality, intersectorality, ways in which we bring things together, combine, integrate, and above all, lift the scale and the pace of ambition, and the scale and the pace of our abilities to meet that ambition, turn ambition into action. It's very much about systemic change. It's about moonshot thinking to the extent that that helps us. How do we mobilize leaps of imagination? How do we mobilize the transformation of human life? How do we mobilize new designs for life in action, in practice, in ways that are meaningful, contextual, relevant, but that above all tap into dynamic change? When we're referring to systems change in the context of innovation in the COP process, we are referring to something that is difficult because it's beyond the reach of what we've managed so far. How do we activate dynamics of change that begin to self-replicate, that have their own momentum, that are not waiting for individual inputs over and over and over, which is just not going fast enough? So this session is really about expanding the space and the pace for climate action, leveraging innovation to do that, and making sure that when we think about climate in this space, in this context, in the heart of COP, this is not just about decarbonization. This is not just about reducing emissions. This is about life, lifestyles, livelihoods, ways of living, changing our relationships with nature, changing our ways of working and living with each other, thinking about sustainable development that has poverty and inequality at the very heart of its purpose. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. We're going to have a session with some reflections from each panelist on a broad question that is related to the purpose of this hub. And then we'll have a bit of a debate on some of the key topics that we know for this COP are particularly pertinent. So it's my pleasure to introduce Andrew Steer, who heads up the Bezos Earth Fund, has a long career and history of intervening to create the space for possibility and for action in the world. Dr. Renata Thakur and actually Dr. Andrew Steer. We all have doctors here, so we actually first. Dr. Renuka Thakur,
Yes.
who is the founder and CEO of the Global Sustainable Futures Networks, and Mr. Jim Gowan, chairman of JESI, and a pleasure to meet you all three. We may be joined by a fourth speaker, and if so, we'll introduce her into the panel. So let's start with the opening question, and I'm going to ask you, Jim, if you wouldn't mind going first on this, and then we'll go to Renuka and to Andrew. How can we use innovation? And by innovation here, I'm referring to innovation in the broadest sense. So this is not pure technology development or invention. How can we use innovation to expand the space and the pace of climate action, adaptation, environmental regeneration, and sustainable development in the next years? What mind shifts, what practice shifts do we need? Jim.
Very good. Just making sure the microphone is good to go. Well, first of all, excellent meeting, an incredibly distinguished panelists, three doctors. I'm not a doctor, but I can't answer that question until I address the panel you were just on and Masama's opening comments. You're talking about dramatic shifts. You're talking about changes. From the opening comments of daring, sharing, caring, and daring, to your comments of why are we discussing and challenging for the same pot of money that's out there from your previous, I mean, it was fantastic. I'll tell you how we're transforming. This is my first COP after 28. I am from the private sector. I work for Verizon based out of the United States, and I have the honor of being the chairman of GESI, the Globally Sustainability Initiative, which is over 200 member companies headquartered in Brussels. But we also represent the entire ICT sector. And I just want to stick on that for one more second, because that sector and Jesse started out over 20 years ago, very much focused on the service providers, focused on the telecommunications side of things. By the way, which I believe has the greatest opportunity for change and environmental impact. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. But secondly, where we are going to today and what you're going to hear over the next few days from Jesse and Jesse's members and the different representatives, it's about how we're evolving. And Jesse is focused on sustainability in our sector, and our sector's evolving because where we grew up as traditional telecommunications companies, the Deutsche Telekoms, the Verizons, the AT&Ts, we are now expanding out into the Dells and the other pieces of the ITC sector. And why is that so important? And why does that go back to your question of change? It goes to Masama's comment a few minutes ago when he went back to his village and says, how are you going to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions? It comes down to connectivity. We believe fundamentally that as you start to digitize the future generations, connectivity will be at the heart of how we do that. But growing that and doing that in a sustainable fashion, that's the challenge, and that's what we're here working on. That's why this innovation hub that we're going to be talking about for the next 2 weeks, I won't be here for all two, but those are the challenges, and I know you're going to get to that. Those are the things that I believe the ICT sector can bring. I think those are the challenges that Jesse can actually do. And then I look forward to elaborating a little bit more on that on some of your other comments there, but I want to pass it on to my other guests.
Thank you very much, Jim. In fact, I heard the other day that the single greatest new demand on emissions and on compute capacity and emissions is, in fact, OpenAI ChatGPT. So we have a series of growing demands on how do we make that sustainable. Renuka.
Thank you very much. So I believe that when you are talking about scaling, we have so far focused on experts and experts in different ways. Experts, we have also focused on regulators. We have also focused on changes like experts like very different experts, and they are in groups. But end users, we haven't focused on end users. And even if we have focused, we have always laid them saying that you do this, which is not acceptable. And the innovation actually happens at a ground level. Of course, innovation happens at organizational level. So I believe when I'm a system thinker, so I believe in three levels of system. And high level is a global level, which is landscape level. And I think we have done very well. We have understood that what is the global problem. And we have also created global policies or global acts saying that we need climate change and so on. So we have done on that side. Organizational level, we have already established and they are uh, bringing climate change within their business activities. But they have not been successful because there is no one, there is no more motivation or change at micro level because all organizations, who are they? They are full of individuals and individual leadership is key. So I'm also a researcher. So basically, when I started looking at research, and I was very mature, I completed my PhD in just 7 years before. So I was a very mature early career researcher. And I found that there were a lot of challenges for me to engage with the international forums. Also, uh, there were challenges like resources. There were challenges like who would mentor me, who would show me the space where I need to go, how should I go forward, and so on. And being in UK, being so experienced at a like I did business for 12, 30 years, so I was very experienced. And also I had my daughters who were already graduated, and I support. It's found that I was not able to do what I need to do. And so I thought about Global South, but early career researchers spend 3 years in their research and they bring up very innovative ideas as a products or processes and so on. But they are never been accepted in international forum. They don't get these opportunities. And we now focus on developing opportunities for like there is inequality opportunities itself. You know, success comes after success. But how do I get first success? That's the biggest question. And so I opened up an innovative forum in a sense of like I invited early career researchers to join me online. And immediately in 1 year, 6 months, I got 800 coordinators from 55 countries. They joined me without, like, we were pro bono, we were all volunteers, but we wanted to understand who has different expertise and how we can exchange our knowledge. And that grew up so very well. And then I started inviting senior researchers to mentor them. Then we got businesses, we got different people, like all everyone started joining me. Today I have 6,000 coordinators from 165 countries. And we have also now networks, organizations, and many other people. Of course, I have met Mazama, and he told me that there are three words: sharing, caring, daring. And I said, yes, I like sharing. I do care, but when should I bring daring? And I questioned my husband that if I am feeling so poor when I'm not having these opportunities, many people are doing that. What should I do? And he said, you should do it now. Why? So that daring I got from him, and he's here today with me. So I'm very proud. But saying that, now we have got a very dynamic network. I can reach out to 1 million people in one email now. So that's the capacity I have grown. I find dynamic space where people are innovating with different ideas. And that is what we want. I am saying that why can't organizations actually, when I was flying here, I went to Heathrow and I found there were plenty of electronic stands now to just you scan your passport and you get your boarding passes, right? And there were plenty of assistants helping them to teach us that, okay, you do this way. They were very excited because they got that temporary job to help us. I was wondering that when this is known to people, their temporary jobs are going away, what these people be doing? And that is what organizations need to think when they are bringing new technologies. And AI is going to be a part of our world now. As soon as we are going to move to automation, people are going to lose jobs. How do we bring these people skilled, and how we make possible for them also to get jobs and have different, whatever the alternatives we provide, are we are providing alternatives, are we providing a space for them again to keep on moving? Those things are needed. So with the human and non-human, because non-human is now big part of our system, we need to understand what are their roles and how we can build those, because any actions are going to lead to performance outlook, and how we can bring that performance, a well performance where there are all different multidimensional sustainabilities aligned and equalities aligned, and we need to reach there. So I think there are plenty of it to place, and we need to think of them more and more to scale. And when we scale up, we need to bring them all together to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're talking here about expanding the space and the pace of action. Jim, you introduced this core idea of connectivity and how we think about that. And Renuka, you're introducing this notion of how do we get to the ground where action is really happening and tap into and mobilize the power and the powering up of millions of individuals and ensure, welcome to the panel, Dr. Arshi, and ensure that millions of individuals have the opportunity to contribute and find a space and in fact multiply. I think this question around multiplying the interdimensionalities and multiplying the connections so that space becomes indeed generative.
Incredible.
Andrew, I'm going to pass next to you. Just one small, Dr. Arshi, what we are doing here is beginning with just some reflections on this core question on how we expand the space and the place for climate action and adaptation, regeneration, the broader sense of innovation and action. We'll come to you shortly after Andrew. Andrew.
Great. Thank you, Kirsten. And thank you, Masamba. And thanks for what you're doing at the Global Innovation Hub. So I hope everyone has looked at your website. It's a really exciting and difficult thing that you're trying to do. And Kirsten, as you rightly said, the word innovation is used quite loosely. And it's really important to unpack what we're talking about. Innovation can involve totally new things, like, for example, alternative proteins. You can now eat real chicken without killing chickens, thanks to lab. We're working on that. New, totally new. Innovation can involve taking existing things and making them better and cheaper. So, for example, an electric school bus in the United States costs $300,000. A diesel one costs $100,000. So we and others are driving down that price. So that's the second form of innovation. Third form of innovation is when you've got an existing technology, you actually apply it in a new way. So you use, cell phones in a way to inform farmers, for example. It's not new, it's a new way of using it. You use satellites to measure deforestation, for example. And it's a third form of innovation. But it's the fourth form of innovation that actually we're really talking about here, which is putting the pieces together. Because if you want systems change, there are very rarely silver bullets. It's not like there's one new product that will come along, solve the problem. It's actually putting the pieces together. And even in all those examples I just gave, actually, you need to put the pieces together. So designing alternative proteins is a great idea, except that people have to want to eat them. You have to change tastes. You actually have to change the regulatory system of food safety. You've got to rethink what about the cattle farmers that are actually going to lose their incomes? So you've got to put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. So too, school buses, for example, sounds great. We'll drive down the price. But actually, you've got to think about a whole range of issues. The manufacturing at the moment, 96% of buses that are electric are built in China. So we need to build capacity elsewhere. So too, you need to get parents, teachers associations being willing to spend the extra amount to start with. And then you need to get utilities to be willing to pay for the battery storage during those long summer months when actually they can save more than $10,000 every single year by using a school bus as a battery. And in America, there are 480,000 school buses, 480,000 batteries, and reform the way we do renewable energy throughout the entire grid. So that helps to understand sort of how you put things together. And one of the things that we're most excited about is thinking through the big sort of moonshot type bets that will require really exciting change. So, for example, landscape restoration in Africa, 100 million hectares could be brought into a green future. Take carbon dioxide molecules that are up there, bring them to where they're killing people, by the way, up there in the atmosphere, bring them down to Earth in the form of trees and bushes and crops and soils. And instead of death, they bring life, they bring vitality, they bring resilience, they can double farm income. We know the technology. There are hundreds of thousands of small African groups that are very good at doing it, but actually the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are not yet in place. We have financiers willing to put a lot of money into it, but they don't know how to intermediate with 10,000 smallholders. So you need intermediating institutions. You then need to monitor it using satellite systems that actually will be able to see, are we actually getting our money's worth? Then you need carbon markets which will come in and finance them. So you've got this, again, this idea of an amazing moonshot that could change the world, but we need leaders that know how to work those different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. And as both of you were saying so well, it's not only technology, it's actually hearts and minds. It's the way you think about things. It's changing the mindset. So, for example, in that issue of landscape restoration, for most of history, at least modern history, a minister of planning or a minister of finance, when you say, what about investing in capital? They'll think that's about building a factory or building a port. Well, yes, it is. But it's also about investing in the God-given natural capital, which is actually in your rural areas. And my word, that could be more transformative than anything.
In fact, it's about entirely new classes of assets. As you rightly say, we're investing in leaders and in the capacity to have those pieces integrate.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much, Andrew. So building here, connectivity, mobilizing from the ground and people, connecting people, and making sure that we actually tap into where the real innovations are. But if they aren't joined up, and if we can't take a way of thinking of this systemically and holistically, we don't get the change we need at the scale or the pace. Dr. Arshi, what's your perspective on this question? Just try speaking.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. And my apologies for the delayed intervention. Quite the morning cardio for each one of us, I believe. Thank you very much, Musamba, for the gracious invite and this fantastic panel. My journey with sustainability has been quite a remarkable one. Much like most people here, I was also one of them thinking that we have to make investments, we have to be cognizant, but it could wait. However, a couple of years ago, as a family office and also individually, we invested in engineered nature-based solutions. The reason why I mentioned this here is because it's the impact needs to be demonstrated, and we have to be very clear in communicating that. My uncle, who is a biotechnologist and has done almost 40 years of research in biotechnology and botany, started a lot of different experiments in nature-based clones. Imagine a species which grows at a speed of 1.5 feet per day minimum, is regenerative, and has a massive carbon sequestration capability. We have this agenda for decarbonization, digitalization, deurbanization, all of these great things that are on everybody's mind. But we need solutions that are far more intelligent, have a higher efficacy, and most importantly, the impact can be demonstrated. Now, what is this tree? It is a species of bamboo. Most people are aware that there are almost 1,600 types of bamboos. We have taken one native species, made genetic modifications, and through tissue culture technology, have made 10 million clones of the same annually. This also helps emitting 30% higher oxygen. And now, what may you think of the high carbon sequestration capability? It helps us develop renewable energy, bioethanol, green electricity, hydrogen, bamboo based fuel. Now, imagine your return on investment. A tree which is constantly regenerating from its own shoots helps air pollution, water, noise, sandstorm, and the most important thing being reduces temperature by 4 to 5 degrees minimum. I cannot honestly calculate the benefits of this tree. It is impossible because it is so many. There are many benefits of nature, intelligent nature based solutions. Unfortunately, many years ago, I was called out for being an environmentalist. In the year 2020, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, ruler of Dubai, was given the Apex Award for being an environmentalist. And the second awardee was me. So many years later, the rulers are called environmentalists and environment lovers. But when we started this journey, it was always very underwhelming in terms of response. But today, because of geopolitical crisis and the understanding for energy transition, it is far more, the reception is greater. Unfortunately, also today, we do see and witness that nature-based solution, despite having the capability to support 40% of the energy agenda, is still not very well understood and accepted. We are still talking about extremely fancy technologies that are expensive failures and have higher greenhouse gas emissions. The bamboo is an economic powerhouse. And most importantly, is a direct CO2 capture and storage. There are massive environmental and economic disasters because of technologies that are overwhelmingly expensive and impacting human health. So we have to take these global commons into consideration. And I believe, as somebody who's within a family office for so many years, our agenda on carbon emission has been much lower than what we have invested in. But I believe the impact needs to be understood by individuals such as yourself, individuals on the panel, that we need to go for simple yet higher solutions with higher efficacy and impact.
Thank you very much indeed. Andrew, in fact, referred to the power of taking existing things and reframing and recasting them to create the kind of innovation space. And what you're talking about here is this opportunity that sits with nature in our reframing of our understanding of what's possible if we start to tap into the real potential of the environment that we've only barely begun to understand. So let me ask all of you, or those who feel particularly passionate, to reflect on this, building on what we've been talking about, expanding the space and the pace, shifting minds and shifting practices, and looking for where there are possibilities for exponential change, transformative change. One of the core purposes of this innovation hub is to create a space to move from what we think is possible to what is needed. But that also means reframing needs. The reference to the notion of demand-side innovation, changing our relationship with resources, materials, learning to live well with less, but not living well with less as an austerity play, living well with less use of materials, more intelligent use of materials, resources, energy, in a way that leads to thriving lives for 11 million people. Where do you see examples of that happening in a way that we should be learning from as quick as possible and really leaning into the sharing and making sure that others are able to replicate? Where are we changing the way we live effectively through innovation?
So first off, I'm just going to comment on the three other panelists. Every single one of those comments that they made and areas they went, I am going to remember bamboo is an economic powerhouse. That is my favorite quote now. But everything we talked about there, I kept going back to education, changing mindsets, changing how we solutions are available. It's how do we communication to a million people, changing mindsets. It starts with education. And I'm going to go back to Jesse and what our role in the globally sustainability in the ICT sector. It's about how do we educate and how do we bring digital solutions to people. COVID was a great example with remote learning when everyone stayed home and connectivity was so important for those folks to get there and educate. So I wanted to just
I will
leave it
not.
there.
I will not at the moment.
I want to just go to then your question there about how do we live with less or think about things differently. I'll just give our sector, and you mentioned mobile phones. If you just look at what we've done at my company, at Verizon, we took back over 18 million phones last year and repurposed over 15 million of them. It's a simple example of one company, one of the largest companies. But when you look at what Jesse does by putting all of us together, sustainability is not a competitive sport. I'm incredibly competitive when it comes to my competition, and we will be always looking to serve our customers better and grow our company. But when it comes to sustainability, that's not the objective. So circular economy, giving things a second life, and I'll go one more step further. It's your entire sustainable supply chain. How you look at the life cycle of product. We talked about some of the geopolitical challenges that was mentioned down there, but raw material challenges, those are finite resources. How do you think about that in giving them a second life, in dematerializing the products that give you the same high quality and the same opportunity, but change the way it's used, and then make sure, in the world of 5G, you've all heard about 5G and 6G is going to come. Well, not everywhere is going to get those technologies. Let's repurpose 4G technologies and radios to the areas that are not used at this time. So, to really focus on our sector and what Jesse's purpose is, it's how do we grow networks, provide connectivity, and give real life examples of changing that mindset through education at the earliest level.
Thank you. Education is critical. I can imagine, Renuka, also for your work.
Thank you. I would talk about innovation in governance sector, in the sense of, we are living in a world where top-down leadership exists. And what happens that one leader shows the way and others follow. And yes, that can work until we don't make mistake, or until the leader does not make mistake, or until we don't look at alternatives, or until someone does not copy the pattern and reimagine the same thing and becomes a leader again. So a few things, there are plenty of limitations, and we have been gone through that from last 70 years, and we have been following those things. Other is something like expert leadership. So people work in their silos, they become leader, they have their own thing, but they become so closed in mind that, or they might do multidisciplinary things, but still they don't integrate and they do not allow. And so there could be several overlaps, several lack of time and other things that does not integrate and does not go in the same way, or does not get into the point where they converge and try to disseminate the best way forward. So I talk about interdependent, intercollaborative leadership. And what I mean that each one of us works as an expert in their own space, but we collectively deliver and leadership that allows us to contribute to that highest level of value that we share, which is sustainable development. And for that, I have already started a process which I feel that it's very innovative. I haven't seen that, at least I have not seen a duplicate one or like alternate to that. And what I have done is that whoever joins my network, I provide them, first of all, I call them coordinators. I don't call myself anything else or them anything else. We all are coordinators. We are the coordinators between our own expertise and the rest of the world, where we want to coordinate and give them whatever is possible. Secondly, I provide them a chairship. Each one who joins us is a chair and is chair of its own expertise. And how we define that? We have 6 elements. So one is STG. So between 1 to 17. So they select only one STG. Of course, we know that there are plenty of synergies between SDGs. Only one cannot be the driver, but still we tell them to focus on one thing so that at least we can then say that, okay, we are contributing to that SDG. That is the highest one whichever they are passionate about. Second is we have domains, and we have 4 domains, that is research, education, enterprise, and community. So out of these 4 domains, we ask them to choose one domain. Then we have level, and that is global level, university level, country level, any levels, plural level. We have tribal level, we have indigenous level, whatever they want to choose. So we have level. And then we ask them to put 3 particular words which describes their own activities. So it could be for Mosaba, it would be innovation, global innovation hub. And that could be like 3 particular words. And these 6 words make them a unique chair in the world.
So you're creating almost like a neural net for people to really create a collective intelligence.
Yes.
In the way in which you're doing that. Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you.
We allow them then to continue to do their own job, but we say that extend this chairship to deliver for the sustainable development.
So it's a kind of an amplification of the role in the world. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Andrew, you are running an organization that has a very significant capacity to make change happen. And you represent an organization grounded and originated in the global north, where we know we have a real responsibility to bear in terms of our impact on the global south and our impact on the world generally. Where do you see exceptional examples of demand side innovation making a difference on the way we live?
Well, you're absolutely right, Kirsten, when you say we need lifestyle changes. Up until now, actually, for climate change, we haven't needed that as much. So, for example, in the United Kingdom, greenhouse gas emissions have fallen quite a lot, GDP has risen quite a lot, and most citizens of the United Kingdom have not the slightest idea that that's happened. Why? Because they still use just as much electricity, that actually it comes from gas rather than coal, and it happened without them even knowing. Now, unfortunately, that kind of thing is not going to be able to keep happening. As we move towards the 2030s, and throughout the 2030s and 2040s, you won't be able to rely on little switches like that happen sort of in the back room. You're actually going to have to change the way you live and travel and work and so on. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have a worse life. I mean, it doesn't mean we have to stop growing. It just means we have to grow quite differently, and that growth needs to weigh less than it does now. And as we were saying, I mean, we have to move from the sort of take, make, waste economy into a circular economy. And countries like the Netherlands have said, okay, by 2050, we're going to be totally circular. And they've thought through exactly what that means. It's not easy, by the way. It needs a massive mind shift change, but it doesn't make you poorer. The economy not only needs to be more circular, it also needs to be more sharing. So we need a sharing circular economy. The average automobile is actually only used for something like 6% of the time. Well, what about the other 94%? Couldn't we use it for something? Well, probably yes. So we need to sort of think quite differently. And if you think even of the word extractive industry, we say, oh, I'm from the extractive industry. You've got to change it. They shouldn't call themselves extractive. We don't want to dig things out the ground so much anymore. They should be refining whatever it is, the metals, the minerals, or whatever. Come to like Indonesia has said, okay, plastic pollution is killing our seas, it's ruining our fishing industry. So they're investing massively in collecting plastics and then forcing, new technologies which will change it. I did want just to say a word. So there are some very good examples, but we absolutely haven't grasped this yet. Particularly in the United States, where I happen to live at the moment, the notion of a circular economy, that phrase doesn't even resonate. So we've got to do a much better job on that. The idea of decarbonizing, that's easy to understand. Even adapting, that's easy to understand. But going to a circular economy is difficult to understand. And there are organizations like PACE, the Partnership for Accelerating the Circular Economy, that are really trying to sort of figure out how to, and I know you in your wonderful work, Kirsten, you're doing some of the same thing. I did just want to mention a word on education, because you're absolutely right that the environmental movement has really, and I count myself as guilty as anyone else, has really dropped the ball on education. And I think the reason is that we think, well, we don't have time to educate children. I mean, we got to act now. Well, yes and no. We have to act now, but we have to think of the 2030s. And do you know, in 2030, more than half of all the school children in the world that leave school will be totally ill-equipped, even for today's economy, let alone for tomorrow's. And this COP is the first one ever, I believe, where there is an education day. And to the great credit of the education community, they're actually pushing the environmental community to get their act together. The environmental community has done a moderately good job of education relating to climate change. So we have to get curriculum in the school to teach about climate change. There's much, much more to it than that. A green economy needs different skills. And so too, if you've got $1 million to spend on adaptation, don't go out and buy cement to build more, even though it's a good idea to build seawalls. Much better to spend it on educating to create flexible, smart, resilient children, because whether we like it or not, the migration to the city driven by climate change in countries like Africa are going to continue. We need young people that actually are flexible and can adapt in a city environment, sort of thing. And we are not thinking that through. And really, let's hope that in this COP we do for the first time. UNICEF's working on this now. My wife runs a wonderful big NGO called the Education Development Center. They're here in force for the first time ever. Never been to a COP before. The educators are here, and we need to support them.
In fact, I remember at New York Climate Week this year, I'm part of the 17 Rooms initiative in the education stream. And indeed, that for the first time, this real sense of we need to bring the mind shifts with the practical skills that we need. And particularly, as you rightly say, mindsets prepared for resilience, constant adaptation, resilience, and an ability to innovate. Dr. Ashi, can I come to you on a question that adds in an element here on root causes? These reframes, these new ways of thinking, new ways of being, starting, ending, finishing with our own capacity to shift our understanding of ourselves. Do you think innovation can be wielded to address the root cause problems? And I don't just mean emissions. I really mean in the broader sense of our relationship with the environment.
Honestly, innovation is the only solution as of right now. I don't believe a lot of activism can lead to on ground change. I'm a believer that you have to really go and do that yourself. And the younger people today are far more intelligent than what we were back in the day. They are far more informed. They exactly know what they want from life, from the agenda on climate change, from energy transition. And I get that a lot when I interact with them extensively. What particularly drives them is data, is impact. This is from my individual opinion. Let's get into the empirical disclosures. From somebody who comes from a background of mining and heavy industry, oil and gas, and metal, ferrous and non ferrous scraps, take that from me when I say so. The transition has been very difficult for me as well in order to get into sustainable investments. 1,000 trees planted in 4,000 square meters, 1 acre, would sequester a minimum 60 to 80 tons of carbon dioxide. Which carbon capture technology gives you that? None. The answer is zero. One tree would typically emit more than 300 kgs of oxygen. That's enough for one person to breathe for their lifetime. 1,000 trees again would be able to produce 1.2 liters of bioethanol. 4 kg of bamboo would be able to produce 1 kg of gas with less than 1% ash content. And the calorific value of that of coal. Remember, this is not a competition between renewable and fossil fuel energy. It has to coexist, and we have to be practical when we talk about it. The cement industry, more specifically, which is a primary raw material provider for most other vertical industries, just for 1 ton of cement that is produced, you require 0.5 ton of coal. Swapping that with bamboo biochar is not just sustainable, but also economical, because this is going to be regenerative produce. So I'm not talking from an activism standpoint. I'm talking about pure economics, that it is beneficial. We're sitting in the Middle East where water, and frankly, water is an actual source of concern for every part of the world. An active bamboo plantation with the engineered solutions that we provide will thrive on sewage water, used water, even rejected nuclear waters. Can you even possibly anticipate the amount of savings one country will witness with desalinization costs coming up? Remember, we dispose 60% of that in the blue economy. Bamboo produce is a 100 replacement of plastic as well. Now, when we are talking about futuristic initiatives that not just do good, but also, again, to the point of circular economy, even the waste is utilized for high quality fabric. Every part of the bamboo is only providing us and supporting and giving us the convenience that we want as a civilization. But at the same time, is not only reducing emission, is becoming that permanent 100% carbon sink. Why are we not more focused on intelligent nature and technology solutions? This is a product of almost 40 years of research. Why are we not leveraging human ingenuity to provide solutions that are not just sustainable, but also make sense? Particularly the young people, when we talk about doing good, they are far more pragmatic. They are, and that is the truth. They understand that it is not possible to do away with every format of fossil fuel energy, but at the same time, it is possible to inculcate and emphasize nature-based solutions into that agenda. I particularly want to applaud the vision of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the UAE president, in terms of being at the hem of this entire endeavor, the COP28. No other conversation or convention has been as huge and this inclusive as COP28. The leadership of this country has not just dedicated $162 billion into sustainable investments, but is actually demonstrating them on ground. The target for net zero 2050, the net zero target for 2030. I am not just optimistic, but extremely sure we will go there before the dedicated time.
Well, it's certainly we need to. So I think that's a good exhortation to all of us to think about how do we leverage spaces like this, spaces of exchange, of meeting one another, of hearing from people from very different perspectives. We were referring to the key tag words for the Innovation Hub in this COP: sharing, caring. Circularity is all about thinking in terms of sharing and caring in the ways in which we unlock the properties of what's already in the natural world, the ways in which we unlock the properties of environmental, the properties of nature that we have thought in singular terms, and in fact they are multidimensional, and there are so many ways in which we can renew. Then we come to daring. So if I think about what we've talked about here, I'm going to ask you to finish with a very, very short, one sentence each. What is your challenge in innovation and invitation to the innovation hub that is embedded in the COP process as the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub? What is your challenge in innovation to do something to the role that it can play in thinking about how do we ensure that sustainability is not a competitive sport, that it is about sharing, it is about value addition through the ways in which we rethink our economics and the ways in which we tap into the properties of things? And how do we think about this in an intelligent, measured, impactful way that taps into intelligences all over on the ground, a collective intelligence? So let's start with you, Dr. Arshi. Your invitation, your challenge to the Innovation Hub. What role can it play in COP28 and leading towards COP30?
I think my only challenge always has been having people understand the advantages, or rather the return on investment that we all like to hear with nature-based solutions. And that is my open invitation to the Global Innovation Hub, that we don't just constantly advocate, talk, educate, but we also implement it. Very importantly. Thank you.
Stay away from big concepts and frameworks. Come down to earth with real suggestions of real moonshots. Let's pick 6 and suggest what it might be, and create a political and a citizen narrative that makes things irresistible and unstoppable. We suffer hugely from lots of meetings talking about concepts and not enough talking about actual moonshots and who needs to be in the room with the right checkbooks, with the right skill set, with the right faith in order to get it done.
Thank you. I would like to say about not talking about the supply chain or circular economy, but the circular economy of the systems of systems. And that is where I would like to say, where you can bring all these concepts together and starting as a driver for nature-based solution, tapping into agriculture and farming industry with 4 concepts called carbon budgeting, carbon mobilizing, carbon literacy, and carbon sustainability. Thank you.
And I would say utilizing the Global Innovation Hub, the public-private partnership aspect, because I think this being my first COP and bringing more of the private industry to this conversation, it's how we're going to change, it's how we're going to educate, how we're going to look at things differently. And private has such a big, big responsibility. So does the public, so does governmental, so do NGOs. That conversation needs to start in this room and continue. And, you know, I know you don't want to just talk about circular economy. I think that's a tangible way to start it, get it going, and change that mindset to, you know, dematerialize what we're thinking about.
We started this morning talking about the implementation gap between our commitments and the reality of where we are now. So that's a ground. It's a very difficult, messy ground, and this is an opportunity really to indeed make it irresistible and unstoppable, because we fire up imaginations, we keep it real, and we make sure we've got people embedded working right across. Thank you very much, all of you, for this morning. No, I think we will have to close.
A circularity of the whole system.
Indeed.
I give you.
It's in fact putting all of the pieces together and creating a space where those pieces stay connected. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a next session following on. We'll take a 5-minute changeover and break. Thank you.